This is the Levant Mine, also known as the mine under the sea. Opened in 1820, it plunged 2,000 feet into the earth and stretched a full mile beneath the Atlantic Ocean. You can probably imagine what might happen if one of those tunnels collapsed. Incredibly, that wasn't even the worst of it. This is the story of the Levant Mine disaster. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Many jobs today are stressful, some emotionally draining, others physically exhausting. That's far rarer now than it was a couple of centuries ago. While better safety technology has helped, the real catalyst for change has been legislation, because no matter how effective a safety measure might be, nothing motivates a company quite like the threat of legal consequences to actually invest in and enforce proper safety. Mining has never been easy, and it still isn't. But today we have electricity, forced ventilation, and hydraulic machinery. Workers just 200 years ago had none of that. One such place was the Levant Mine, situated on the far southwestern tip of England. Opened in 1820, it started as a copper mine but also produced tin and arsenic, which were becoming highly valuable for making brass and bronze. But for those labouring deep underground, conditions were nothing short of hellish. Reaching depths of over 600 metres, the mine was pitch black and sweltering, with some tunnels extending a full mile beneath the ocean floor. One section, ominously nicknamed 40 Backs, lay just 12 metres below the seabed. Had that tunnel failed, seawater would have flooded the mine faster than anyone on the lower levels could escape. Even without that looming threat, the mine was brutal. Temperatures often soared past 40 degrees Celsius, forcing miners to work nearly naked to avoid heat stroke. Many even went barefoot. Boots would fill with sweat, leading to trench foot or worse. And without artificial light, absolute darkness reigned, except for one simple solution. Each morning, miners would scoop a handful of clay, mold it into a base, and stick a candle to the front of their cap. Lanterns weren't practical. They needed both hands to climb, drill, and haul. So, as odd as it looked, the head candle was the only reliable light source. Of course, it came with its own dangers. Candles blew out constantly, so miners carried matches in waterproof brass cases. Each day, hundreds of men descended through the shafts, facing 80 ladders to reach the lowest levels. Once there, they used hand drills to bore channels into the rock, packed them with gunpowder, lit a fuse, and cleared the tunnel before the blast. Afterward, they'd haul away the rubble with hand tools. Behind them, support crews followed with logs and planks to reinforce the newly dug passages. Meanwhile, tons of ore had to be carted kilometers back to the shafts to be hoisted to the surface. And after a grueling shift, miners still had to climb all 80 ladders back up. That ascent alone could take 90 minutes, and that climbing time wasn't paid. Wages only started once they reached their assigned level for one of 3 8-hour shifts, 6 days a week. All things considered, Levant Mine was among the harshest workplaces imaginable, yet each year hundreds of people worked there, roughly 2/3 of them underground. The rest, mostly women, children, and injured men, worked on the surface, breaking and sorting ore. Below ground, workers could be as young as 14. Exhaustion led to frequent ladder falls, and stray gunpowder dust often ignited on candle flames, causing blinding flashes or premature explosions. Those too injured to climb were hauled up with ropes, or later via skips, paired buckets in a dedicated shaft powered by steam engines. Then in 1857 a new innovation arrived, the man engine. It was essentially a vertical lift system with small wooden platforms attached every 12 feet along a 1,000-foot rod. A steam engine raised and lowered the rod in 12-foot strokes. Miners would step onto a platform, ride it up 12 feet, then step off onto a fixed ledge in the shaft wall. They'd wait for the next platform to arrive, step back on, and repeat the process 137 times to reach the surface. It sounds insane, and it was, But compared to the 90-minute ladder climb, the man engine cut travel time to just 30 minutes and was far safer for exhausted workers. Injuries dropped and average lifespans even increased. Yet by the 1850s, modern elevators were already emerging. And even among man engines, Levant's was primitive. It used only one rod and ran on an older, choppier engine. By 1919, after 62 years of constant operation, the system was worn down by moisture, heat, and millions of repetitive cycles, carrying up to 130 men at a time. On October 20th, 1919, the morning shift was ending. Around 3 p.m., miners began heading for the surface. Many had just returned from World War I, only to face a struggling economy. For years, workers had warned management that the man engine was unsafe. It rattled violently and many landings had rotted. But repairs cost money, and plans for a new shaft and modern lift never began. That day, as miners crowded onto the narrow platforms, a sharp bang echoed through the shaft. It was the sound of a critical metal bracket snapping. It hadn't been replaced in 5 years and had worn thin. In an instant, it gave way, and the entire 1,000-foot rod, with dozens of men on it, began to fall. Near the top, men screamed as the platform beneath them vanished. The rod buckled, smashing through the supports meant to stabilize it. After dropping 12 feet, the upper 300 feet sheared off and continued falling. Farther down, miners heard what sounded like an avalanche of wood and stone. Some leapt to nearby ledges, others clung on as they were dragged down into the black, their candles blowing out. The shaft filled with the roar of splintering timber, and then silence, followed by desperate cries for help. The broken section had shattered beams and landings before jamming in place, completely blocking the tunnel. Back at the surface, workers knew something was wrong. John Grenfell, who'd just reached the top, immediately volunteered to go back down. He found a tangle of bodies and wreckage sealing the passage. Horrifyingly, his father, a mine manager, was among the missing. With no telephones, news spread by word of mouth. Off-duty miners and rescue crews from nearby mines poured in. Rescue was grueling. The shaft was too damaged for lifts, so every rescuer had to be lowered on a rope. They cleared hundreds of pounds of rock and timber day after day. Meanwhile, over 100 trapped men relit their candles and regrouped. Many levels still had emergency ladders, allowing them to reach 2 alternate shafts with ladders to the surface. Just 2 hours after the collapse, to the shock and relief of rescuers, men began emerging from the engine rooms, exhausted but alive. Incredibly, nearly all joined the rescue effort immediately. But over 50 co-workers remained missing. For 3 days, teams dug and crawled through unstable tunnels. Too often, they reached trapped miners only after their calls for help had gone silent. By the end, 31 men had perished. Most were found near the top. The last 3 were recovered deep in the shaft, killed by falling debris. Yet there were also miracles. 14-year-old William Lawry spent 15 hours pinned under another miner's body before being pulled out with a snapped collarbone and 8 broken ribs. He made a full recovery. Nicholas Thomas held on for 50 hours, only to succumb to exhaustion just as he was being lifted to safety. Tragically, 5 of the victims had survived the trenches of World War I, only to die in their hometown mine. An official investigation concluded the failed bracket had been poorly manufactured. Controversially, the disaster was ruled an accident, absolving the mine owners of liability. This was especially striking because Levant was the only mine in Cornwall still using a man engine. Without compensation, many families were forced to leave their homes. A disaster fund was launched, and donations poured in from the public and even the mine's insurance company. But no amount of money could undo the loss. The mine limped on until 1930, but never recovered. Falling tin prices and the Great Depression made modernization impossible. In 1967, the mine's iconic beam engine was entrusted to the National Trust and preserved. Today, Levant Mine is open to the public, though the underground tunnels remain permanently sealed. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you have a story or suggestion, feel free to submit it through the form in the description. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.